What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome in to the PWTorch Fireside Chat for Friday, February 10th, 2023. What's going on, everybody? Happy Friday. We made it to the end of the week, folks. Hey, cheers to that, right? Cheers to that. Glad everybody could be here with us today. We got a big show planned, and a lot of it coming out of yesterday's flagship edition of the Fireside Chat on Thursday with Tyler Sage and myself. So if you missed that show, head back into the archives. It's right up there on the channel, right next to this show. You can check out that show, but that spurred on the idea of doing kind of an ask me anything kind of show. And we'll preview SmackDown too. We'll make sure to get into that. But people started sending their questions in for the show today. And so that's kind of what I want to do to kind of cap off Friday with taking your questions. Hello to everybody in our chat. Dr. Ross, Milano, thank you so much. I appreciate that. You got it means the world for those kind words. So thank you, and thanks for joining us. If you're listening either live or you're listening later on, go ahead and hit subscribe for our channel here. We got some big news for the channel coming next week that I'm super pumped to share with everybody. And yeah, just really excited to do that. So subscribe so you don't miss that info. Hit the notification button so that you know when we go live. And we are live every single day here on YouTube, providing Torch-style content, but here in video form, live and in living color. So that's why we're here. So Zach, hello. Dr. Ross, hello. Hazan, thank you for joining. Glad you guys are here. I always love kind of manning the chat and seeing the conversations that you guys are drumming up. So, okay, now that the pleasantries are out of the way, let's get into the meat of the show. You know, what I want to do today is I definitely want to preview SmackDown. There's some big happenings on SmackDown tonight. Lily, hello. Thanks for joining us. Appreciate you being here. Glad you're able to listen live. SmackDown should be a pretty big show for lots of different reasons. And we'll get into that. But I want to start first with taking some of your guys' questions. So if you're in the chat, anything on the table, we can talk anything from professional sports to movies, books, politics, I suppose, anything you want. Wrestling, of course. Always love taking your questions on wrestling. But let's open it up here for a few minutes. And while you guys get your questions fired up, if you want to, I will read a question from our good friend, Zach. Good friend of the show, always, very opinionated, and we love that. And so it's great. And he's got a question here that I think should spark some really, really good debate that I'm excited to get to. So he'll kick things off. And he goes, all right, I'm going to be, this is yesterday. He goes, I'd like to expand upon this discussion you started with regards to the way WWE and AEW handle their storytelling versus wrestling. AEW from the outset stated that one of their goals was to be more sports-like. In a lot of ways, they haven't gotten there, but in one crucial way, they're spot on. For the most part, AEW, the most important thing is what happens between the ropes. Look at the Super Bowl. Jalen Hurts isn't cutting promos on Patrick Mahomes. Andy Reid isn't dressing down Nick Sirianni. It's all about what happens on the field on Sunday. That's a lot of AEW's approach. It's not that storytelling isn't important, but it's not the most important thing. Conversely, WWE has always been story-centered, good, bad, or otherwise, whether that story paid off in a good way or not. Dominic Mysterio is getting praised for his story and his so-called character work, but is whatever eventual match happens between him and Ray going to be anywhere as good as Mox versus Hangman or Starks versus Jericho or MJF versus Danielson? Absolutely not. So really, was that story really worth it? It's like getting a slice of cake that's really pretty, but it's more icing and fondant than actual cake as opposed to a slice that's sort of plain looking, but is the best chocolate cake you've ever put in your mouth. I know which one I'm picking. What about you? So, fascinating discussion. Keep the questions coming in because I love this. Lily, we will definitely get to your question about Sami Zayn. So keep that coming. And anybody else, drop those questions in. We'll have some fun here answering some questions. But on the note of Zach's question here, I mean, honestly, and this is going to sound like a cop-out answer from me, and I'm really genuinely not trying to have a cop-out answer here, but it really depends on what you want in professional wrestling matches in terms of what's more important, because it's not like cake. It depends. Somebody out there may love the cake with a lot of frosting on it, and the inside couldn't care less. So like that, you have to stipulate to that. And for that reason, I think it really depends what you want in wrestling, and to each their own on that. I mean, I'm certainly not going to sit here and tell somebody what they should or shouldn't like in professional wrestling, right? That's not my job. However, my job is to look at the current product and determine whether or not it's working to a certain extent. And is it driving viewership? Is it, driving business, right? Like, and that manifests itself in a lot of different ways. AEW really puts all their chips in on having just tremendous wrestling matches on a week-to-week basis. And they hit home runs on that regularly, all the time. And I think that they're really good at that part of what they do. They super serve their audience. And I think they super serve, Zach, your point as to, hey, I want the cake to be really good. Frosting doesn't really matter. I want the cake to be really good. That works. But I think that only works to a certain point when you're talking about growing the fight game and growing the promotion business and marketing big time matches. That only goes so far. There are very good UFC fighters, for example, or boxers that are great boxers, but they either A, have boring fights, or B, can't promote their fights because they don't have a personality, or C, aren't interested in any of that and just want, hey, I want to just wrestle. I want to wrestle this guy. And if the audience boos me, so be it. And those people are great at what they do. They are wonderful athletes and they're great competitors and and everything in between. But they're not making Conor McGregor, Floyd Mayweather level money because they don't draw. And in professional wrestling, you have to have that drawing component. You have to have that outside component, I think, to get something over to the maximum level that it can be over. I don't think that there's a large market out there for just wanting to see good wrestling matches. There's more to it than that. Like, especially in pro wrestling, because it's not a real fight. It's more like an action sequence or a movie than it is like a true athletic competition. So you have to have story behind it for it to reach the next level. You look at the hottest times in the professional wrestling business: Attitude Era, Steve Austin on top, Hulk Hogan, Hulkamania era with Hulk Hogan on top. In those two eras, the match quality, the in-ring work, it wasn't bad, but it is nothing like it is right now. Those matches were rooted in story, big time characters, big time personalities, telling stories in the ring, having feuds, and going out there and doing business. You don't have that era of the work rate guy being on top and who's the greatest the greatest in the world. Like, there's elements of that. I mean, I think Roman Reigns is a really very, very good worker. I think I think that there's a lot of good workers today. Even somebody like Bryan Danielson, for example. Wonderful wrestler, and he's somebody that was able to get past the stigma of, okay, he's just an in-ring guy. But you think about like what launched him to the next level was not his in-ring. That helped lay the groundwork. That helped lay the groundwork for the run that he would go on. But what launched him to superstardom was the yes chant, which, if you think about it, is just ridiculous. It's nothing that like a lethal killer wrestler should be doing, but it's show business. It got him to that next level. It helped tell those stories. That, I think, is important. So, when we talk about what's more important, well, both are very important. And if you're a fan of just good professional wrestling, there's so much of it out there. Tonight on Fight TV, you could log in and buy an independent wrestling show, and you would be taken care of getting like your good in-ring product. It's out there for you to find. It is out there. But this great story, that's not at your fingertips. There's another level there. And I think that's what gets folks and gets companies and gets talent to a new level, because that's what drives investment from the audience, generally speaking. This is the debate, right, Zach? It's not the story of verse, but the end product of the story should be a good quality match. So that, to me, is that's subjective. I mean, that is absolutely subjective. You can look at, there's a group of people who would look at Hulk Hogan versus The Rock at WrestleMania 18, okay, and say that was, I guess some people could make the argument that match is a garbage match, because there's not much, they don't do much in it. There's no flips, there's no dives, there's a lot of punches, and there's some slams, but there's not a lot to it outside of the story, which is the meat of that match, and it makes it one of the greatest WrestleMania matches ever. So it depends on how you classify matches, because I mean that match is going to stand the test of time as being one of the best WrestleMania matches ever. In the same conversation, you have an entirely different match in WWE land: Shawn Michaels versus The Undertaker at WrestleMania 25. Wonderful match, right? But also really different, and both very good matches, both the end of feuds. There can be both. But the thing that roots both of those matches, regardless of the type of style of final match that it was, it's the story. The story. As Amos says here, drama versus action. That is a good way. That's a good way to put it. It's a good way to put it. It's a great question, Zach. It's a great question. I think, it's a balance, especially now when you have, the business has changed, as far as like what matters, and I think, look, these television rights fees, they drive so much money and they drive so much revenue for WWE, and AEW is going to be negotiating their deal soon. And it's like, to have episodic television, which is what this is. Like, it's not one-off independent shows. They are telling stories week to week to week to week to week. It's a little bit different than a show, like Succession, right? Where you've got, it's not that kind of a drama, but it's week to week storytelling. And so, the match, is going to pale in comparison, I think, to, those stories, especially when so many people now, from the big leagues in WWE and AEW to the small independents that are on Fight TV tonight, there's good wrestling everywhere. That it's almost like if you watch a wrestling show and there's no good wrestling on it, like that's the outlier, not the other way around. So that's my 2 cents. You guys are talking it up in the chat. That's wonderful. Let's keep it going with the questions here. This is fun. I'm going to scroll back and get to Lily's question. And Lily says, do you think they're going to keep this dramatic change with Sammy, or do you think they'll slow it down by Sammy explaining why he attacked Roman? No, I think they're going to – I think that's pretty much already been said. Like, without saying it. And Lily, thanks so much for joining us. Thanks so much for asking the question. Appreciate it. I think they're staying the course with Sammy. I think this is kind of the Sammy that this is going to be like a stronger babyface Sammy, who's kind of out there for himself. He's already kind of said why he's attacked Roman Reigns. He says what he wants. He calls out the Universal title and wanting that. He says that Roman Reigns didn't know him at all, and now they're going to fight. And so my thought, we'll get a lot of the future of this tonight on SmackDown. My thought is just that they're on that path. Like this is less sympathetic Sami Zayn babyface and more traditional Sami Zayn babyface who is going to stand up, for himself and fight Roman Reigns and try to win. And I mean, you have the Jey Uso story still lingering in the background. You know, that's still there. And I think tonight we'll get a very good answer to that because you've got because you have a tag team title match tonight. We haven't seen Jey Uso since the Royal Rumble, since he walked out on the Bloodline. So I think we're going to get the next chapter in that too. And as Sean points out here, Sean, I'm going to just totally stamp this idea. Sammy needs his go home promo. I mean, he needs the go home babyface promo. And if there's ever a guy to do it, given the circumstances of the Bloodline story, it's Sami Zayn right now. Like he's got it in him. I mean, that's money. Like this is what the whole Bloodline story was kind of building itself up to, right? Like it was building itself up to that moment, and to this moment of him kind of again cutting that one final babyface promo. And so we do need to see that next week. We do need to see that, but I just don't think it's going to manifest, Lily, in a complete different direction. He may address it, but I think we're going to get kind of a continued dose of aggressive Sami Zayn. You know, I think that's what we're in line for, if you ask me. Amos jumping in here saying the Sami Bloodline storyline has told the majority of its story, and now it's time for the action portion, which will lead to more story, which will branch off different directions. Great call out. Yeah, once the Sami Zayn thing played out and you do the turn, now you're in a whole different. It's like you're in Act 3 of the story, really. You know, if Act 1 is Roman Reigns, Jey Uso, and the creation of the Bloodline, Act 2 is the Bloodline dominates and brings Sami Zayn on board. Now it's Act 3. You know, and now it's like almost like it's like the fall of the Bloodline. And I talked about this yesterday on the flagship show. You have a scenario for WrestleMania lining up where it's like the downfall of the Bloodline. You know, the Bloodline goes down. Not only does the Usos lose the tag titles, but Cody beats Roman Reigns for the Universal Championship as well. That's out there. I mean, there's no guarantee, obviously, but that's the potential is there. And so, yeah, and it can go off a lot of different directions. Like I think once you get past Elimination Chamber, as I mentioned yesterday, you can build a huge 6-man TV match, and with Sami Zayn teaming up with Cody Rhodes and Kevin Owens to take on the Bloodline in a huge 6-man. You put that on Fox a couple weeks before WrestleMania, and that's going to do gangbusters as far as ratings go. That's huge. So yeah, this will be interesting to see, Milano. I hope Cody and Roman stay far away from each other until WrestleMania. Yeah, like I mean, I think you have to promo them against one another. I mean, I think part of the intrigue in this feud is seeing it's seeing those stars together. I would not have them get physical in that capacity. And that's the downside of doing like a 6-man tag that I just outlined, is that you do see them interact and you do see them wrestle one another. And I don't know if you want to do that, but it's out there. It is out there. What's wrong with the 6-man tag? That's like, I mean, AEW just had like 2 of them this past week. I mean, that's a huge potential TV match. Like, I mean, I don't see any problem with that. No problem with that whatsoever. That's big for everybody involved. Let's see. Did I miss any questions here? If I did, you guys ping me here. Okay, Dr. Ross. If Roman loses the titles at Mania, how long should it be before he turns face? Oh boy, that's an interesting question, Dr. Ross. I mean, Roman is almost he's not there yet because he's got this thing going with Sammy and he's got this thing going with Cody. But I think without the title, like once he loses that championship, that he's such a big star now, and he oozes such a cool factor that I don't know that it's going to take all that long for audiences to get behind him. Like, I think especially if he takes like a long break after WrestleMania, like if he does the job to Cody and then we don't see him again until, a few weeks before SummerSlam, he will return with loads and loads of positive babyface fanfare in a scenario like that. So I kind of think, I hope, as Sean says here, that it's a little bit, but they may not have a choice because he's just turned himself into this kind of, without the title. And once this story ends of his reign being over, he kind of like and the fact that he's a part-time guy, he kind of transitions into he transitions into a bit of a legacy star for WWE, once that happens. And the audiences love to cheer legacy stars of WWE. Ask Randy Orton how that goes. And I think like you hit the nail on the head here, Sean. Don't rush it. The audience will tell WWE what to do with Roman Reigns, I think, upon his return. They react in a big favorable way. Okay, don't swim against that tide. If they act negatively and you can get heat, all right, go with that. Don't go against that tide. Just let the fans dictate for once, right? Like the curse of Roman's early run in WWE, as successful as it was the fact that Vince McMahon was jamming him down everybody's throat as a babyface. And he was rejected as a lead babyface, not as a star, but as a lead babyface. Just don't do that anymore. Let the audiences just go with him and then pick a direction based on that. I think that's what I would do. But again, they may not have a choice. He's going to fall into legacy territory pretty darn quick. And that's going to be an issue. All right, let's continue to scroll here, and then we'll get to a quick little SmackDown preview before we ride off into the sunset. Super Bowl prediction: Chiefs. I have Chiefs +2. In some bets, some parlays. So Dr. Ross, Chiefs +2. Sorry to all the Eagles fans out there. Nothing against the Eagles. But just the +2, man, Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes. Oh, it's hard to bet against that. Hard to bet against those odds. What I don't know is, am I taking the over or am I taking the under on the national anthem, the length of the national anthem? Some of those prop bets are so great. We like to take advantage of those, and my daughter actually picks a lot of them. Last year she won us a good chunk of dough by picking purple Gatorade. So we're gonna lean on her to pick some of those prop winners again. Chiefs 30-21. I like that. That would win me. Zach, I know you're a Chiefs fan this weekend. As a Cowboy fan, you don't want to see the Eagles win another Super Bowl. So, yeah. All right. Let's jump in and let's preview SmackDown here before we wrap things up. So, there's a couple matches that are being promoted on tonight's show. The first is the tag team titles are on the line. Braun Strowman and Ricochet are challenging the Usos for just the SmackDown tag team titles. That's it. Ricochet and Strowman won the tag team tournament to get this opportunity. And so that's the match. Not much to it from that perspective. However, you've got the whole story with you have the story with the Usos here, and you've got the the Jey Uso thing. He has not been with the Bloodline since the Royal Rumble. Now he has this title defense. So what happens? I think we get some storyline development here. I don't know if it's time to take those belts off of the Usos. Like, it's so difficult because on one hand, I think it is time from the perspective of if you're really going to lean in and you're really going to tell the story about Jey not being with the Bloodline, well, of course he's not going to be there for this match tonight, or things won't go well. And so if you needed a crutch to get those belts off of the Usos, here it is on a silver platter. At the same time, I just don't see Braun Strowman and Ricochet as like a made enough tag team to beat the Usos. After all that the Usos have done, I think for them to lose those titles, even if they're going to go ahead and get them back later before WrestleMania, is just not the right thing. I think if you're going to go with Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens against the Usos at WrestleMania, you want that to be the first time they get beat for those titles. I think that's the moment. And if you kind of give that a moment, if you give that moment away, that's just not going to work, even if it fits kind of the bill here. So I think this is going to be a good match. I'm intrigued in the match itself, but also more so how they handle the Jey Uso thing. I mean, that's a pretty interesting storyline component that will be playing out tonight. Also on the show, the only other announced match or segment that we have is a fatal four-way to determine the number one contender for the Intercontinental Championship. I'm assuming the Intercontinental title match that gets created out of this, it will take place at Elimination Chamber, though it's not promoted that way. But it'll be Madcap Moss against Rey Mysterio, against Karrion Kross, against Santos Escobar for the shot at Gunther. That's a hell of a match. Madcap is kind of the weird outlier in that one. Interested to see how he fits in with the likes of Karrion Kross and, Shawn and Fatal Four Ways are getting so overdone. Yeah, a bit hard to argue with that. Especially in WWE. I mean, my goodness gracious, they have really beaten those into the ground, especially the last couple of weeks. This one has me looking at what's best for Gunther at this point. I mean, I think you have to look at anything through that lens. Karrion Kross versus Gunther doesn't make a whole hell of a lot of sense. They're both heels. Why do they need to cross paths? I think that'd be a misstep on the part of Gunther's booking, putting him against Karrion Kross. Rey Mysterio, they've done that already. Madcap Moss, not on Gunther's level whatsoever. And then there's Santos Escobar. And so when you break down that group, I mean, Santos Escobar, I think, is who we're going to see get the nod here. And as lots of people are pointing out in the chat, you have Gunther versus Santos Escobar that you can do. But then you also have a whole Imperium versus Legado del Fantasma feud that you can do as well. That can play out on television all the way up until WrestleMania, or as part of the WrestleMania build to whatever Gunther is going to do. So I think there's just a lot of opportunity on the table if Santos wins this. And so that's what I think is going to happen. He's going to win. I think he's going to pin Madcap. Is it an elimination match? Let me look here. No, fatal four-way. So yeah, one fall does it. And I think he's in the match for a reason. And they don't want Karrion Kross taking a pin. I don't think they want Rey Mysterio taking a pin. He's got a big match coming up at WrestleMania, most likely against Dominic. Who's a good choice after that? Well, it's it's Madcap. That's why he's in the match. So I think he's going to take the fall. I think Santos wins it. Awesome, guys. Thank you so much. What a fun show. I think I had such a blast kind of talking through your questions here that I think we're going to make that a fun part of our Friday experience here on YouTube. Just opening up the floor to questions, then a short SmackDown preview, and then we get into our weekend. So I thank you all for joining us today. It's been a blast. Milano, Azan, Lily, Sean, Zach, Dr. Ross, Amos. Who else? I'm sure I forgot somebody. If I did, I apologize. But thank you so much for being here. Subscribe to the channel. Big news coming next week. And it's just a good time to subscribe in general with all the wrestling stuff going on. I do appreciate it, and I think you'll enjoy what we have in store. So hit subscribe, hit the notification button. We're live every day. Thank you guys so much, and we'll talk next time.